Well, should we get rolling?
Sure.
Yep, go for it.
Oh, okay. I'll do it then. Okay. That sounded like I was more prepared than I was.
No,
Yeah.
just begin with hello there.
Hello, hello there.
I was very disappointed when you opened the call and you said hello.
Well, you and
I was like, oh man, come on.
you and Darth both do this. You both jump on calls and we start recording. You go hello there, and I just don't have a good Obi-Wan voice. I think is the
Hello
issue.
there.
Hello there.
I've actually been going through all the movies with my friends and trying to find a different greeting because all the YouTubers use hello there. And my favorite one has been from episode 6, Greetings, Exalted One, which is
Ooh.
what Luke says to Jabba.
To Jabba.
So now, David, every time we join, I'm going to
Oh,
go, Greetings, Exalted One.
Fucking hell. We're all gathered here today because Disney Plus's Obi-Wan Kenobi series just wrapped up, and we thought, what better way to spend the last part of our weekend than to talk about it in some particular depth. We, of course, have Darth, our resident Star Wars YouTuber.
Hello there.
That was good. That was good. And we are joined once again by the magnanimous Rybold, our other Star Wars expert. What's up, Ray?
Hello there.
Oh, okay. I think Darth might have beaten you on that. I think he might have cut you
Yeah.
off on the pass there, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I want
work
to
on
ask
that.
you guys, first of all, just like your general thoughts. So, it's 6 episodes, is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
6 episodes. The first 2 are pretty long, and then they kind of get to a regular sort of show length, and the last one's pretty long as well. Yeah, what do you guys think in general? Like, I have absolutely no idea what other people think of this. I haven't seen any coverage online. So once we talk a little bit about our thoughts, I want to know, like, what the general Star Wars populace think. But yeah, what did you guys think?
Why don't you go first, Darth? I'm curious to see what you thought about this.
As with anything that they've been making recently, nothing is perfect. Everything has problems, but for the most part, I have been absolutely blown away by what they have given us that has been very enjoyable. Having Ewan back, having Hayden back for the brief times that we saw him, the interaction we got, filling in some of those not plot holes, but those blank parts of the canvas that we don't really know what happened after episode 3 before we see them again in episode 4. And yeah, like I said, a lot of it might not fully make sense. A lot of the character arcs weren't perfect, but I love what we got, and that's something that I think a whole lot of the fan base doesn't really appreciate. Is they'll focus way too much on the negatives instead of appreciating that we have this slew of positives. We have this slew of story, this slew of characters, getting to see young Leia, who I think they did brilliantly, and we wouldn't have had that if they didn't push forward and do this. And for all the faults, we had something really good that came out of it.
Yeah, plus we got Ewan McGregor's very good Obi-Wan hair. Like, he has very good hair.
he's
in this.
amazing.
Like, it's just the best hair he's ever had, frankly.
Yeah, and he's just washing with sand.
Yeah!
Like,
That's the healthcare routine the industry doesn't want you to know about.
Yeah, but he stinks, according to the Jawa.
Yeah, that's
He's cutting
right.
meat all day.
I refuse that canonically. I refuse to accept that Obi-Wan smells bad. That man, Ewan McGregor could possibly not smell. It's impossible for him. Ryan, what did you think? Like, what's your vibe on this?
So I really like Darth's positive take there. However, the review that I gave was that I need to qualify this a little bit in that everybody in my life is busy.
Mm-hmm.
They got work, they got kids, they don't have a lot of time for a lot of TV during the week. And there was a barbecue about a week before Kenobi came out that I was at, where most of these people that I think you would classify as like casual Star Wars fans, like they've heard of it, they've seen it, they like it, but they're not going to watch it just because it's Star Wars. And they, the Kenobi came up and they were like, Book of Boba Fett was kind of, and I'm not really interested. So out of all the people there, whenever I'm in a situation like that, I don't like to color the discussion. I want to hear what they think. So I just let them talk. But nobody there was interested, and the general consensus was that they weren't going to watch it. So going through there, about midway through the series, I was like, I haven't seen anything yet that makes me think that I need to go to those friends and say, this is worth your time.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the series wrapped up, I would say that I'm of the general feeling that I would not recommend this to, them. to like, there's a lot of great TV out there. We're in the golden age of television. Like, is this worth you taking the time to see just because it's Star Wars? Not really. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
Fair.
like I really do like Darth's positive take on all that, because I also want to get this out there, and you guys will appreciate this because we spent 8 years talking about Solo.
Yeah.
That we ripped on it mercilessly for like 9 hours.
Yeah.
But we liked it.
We said good stuff. Like, the thing that I always say, because I've been saying this a lot on our Sherlock podcast, is if we didn't like this stuff, we would not spend most of our lives talking about it. Like,
Correct.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
That being said, okay. I've always wanted an Obi-Wan. I've always wanted this TV show. Ever since there were comics about this era, I was like, this would just be... Ewan McGregor would crush this. He would be absolutely incredible. About 7 years ago... Sorry?
And he did.
Oh, it's absolutely superb performances. No one in this acting-wise was the problem. Save maybe young Leia when she started. I think they kind of were struggling to find the rhythm there. But once she got it, it really, really worked for me. So about 7 years ago, there was an episode of Movie Maintenance, which was an old Sanspans radio show, where Gabe pitched an Obi-Wan style film set in this era. And it was like a gritty kind of like, noir story set on Tatooine. Maul comes back and they have this like, bare-knuckled rivalry kind of thing. And so I was kind of wondering what they were going to do with this show in general. Obviously, the two biggest challenges that everybody can see right out the gate is that, like, you can't kill Vader because we know he's in the future stories, and you can't kill Obi-Wan. So the stakes have to be more about, like, moral jeopardy and someone else's mortal jeopardy. So I was kind of interested to see how they finesse that. And I think I tend to agree with you, Ryan. Like, for me, because I'm a pretty casual Star Wars fan a lot of the time, for me, this was the show I always wanted. And in that sense, it did deliver on all of the things I was looking for. I'm kind of not sure I would have gone down the route of making Vader the villain. I might have gone with the Maul route. I just think you can do a lot more with it because you have way more latitude with that character. You can kill him if you want to. You can do different things. So I thought it was a cool choice because obviously emotionally super resonant when you get that conclusion. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. We should say now that probably from here, unless you guys want to say anything else non-spoilery, we can probably then talk about all what happened. But yeah, Darth is abusing the call raised hand feature, which the boys have discovered on Google Hangouts. Yes, Darth, how can I help you?
You will either be sad or happy to hear this, I'm not sure, but apparently at the beginning they actually had Maul in here, and what they found was that it took away too much from the Anakin Obi-Wan storyline. So they actually cut the Maul Obi-Wan storyline so they could focus more on the emotional thing between the original two characters, thinking that was far more important. Maul's one of my favorite characters of all time. I really, really wish they had put him in here, but I'm assuming season 2, season 3, season 4, there's so much left. They've got to bring him back because this is too big, and I don't think there's any way they could use Vader again. Mm-hmm. After season 1 ended, I think the next time they meet just has to be in episode 4. So they need another big bad. It could be Third Sister. It shouldn't be the main Inquisitor, assuming that Rebels is still canon, because that's...
They keep saying it is, but yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm glad he's alive and that we get more time with him because I loved his particular brand of villainy.
Yeah, he's kind of campy in a way that I think we don't see as much in Star Wars these days.
Yeah, and it was a whole lot more in Rebels.
Interesting. It seems you trained with Jedi Master Depa Billaba.
How?
The temple records are quite complete. In close quarter fighting, Bilaba's emphasis was always on Form 3, which you favor to a ridiculous degree.
Now that we're into like spoilers or whatever, one of the things
full spoilers.
Midway through the season that a lot of people were concerned about is Well, I suppose real quick, David, you were asked about like you haven't seen like any of the online discourse. Like
Yeah,
most of
what's
the stuff that
the-
I've seen is either people love it or people hate it, and there's like no room left in the
Oh,
middle
great.
for it was
Cool.
okay, you know.
Awesome. Well, that's
So
exciting for our comments
It's the
section
same as
here.
it's been for the last like like 8
Cool.
years. So
Thrilled to be grilled by both sides. Awesome.
yeah. So where was I going with that? Yeah. So when they got to the end, and it's like, well, obviously Vader knows that Obi-Wan's out there, and why is he not going after him between now and A New Hope? And then you get that like that very last sequence with the Emperor going like, I think you're a little obsessed here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe I was, you know, do you have a problem? Like, no, I can quit whenever I want. Yeah, he's not Obi-Wan's nothing.
So I don't need to. I choose to. I can
Yeah, and
stop
I was like,
doing this.
there you
whenever.
go, right there. That removes Vader from the equation, which is perfect.
Do you think? Okay. Well, first of all, we should talk about. I guess the general. We should probably set up the general story, because there will be people that will watch or listen to this that like haven't seen it. So essentially, kind of the general consensus of the plot here is that Obi-Wan is kind of in isolation, watching over Luke on Tatooine. Elsewhere, Bail Organa is raising Leia, and Leia gets captured by the Inquisitors, who are, and you boys can probably fill in the blanks for me a little bit. They're sort of like a Jedi hunting task force of Sith that Vader has put together, and Leia is captured and taken to
I forget the name.
a planet.
But
She's taken to a
key point, she's taken to a new planet, or a planet that we have. Planet that we haven't seen in live action, I should say.
And it's sort of a
I don't think it's a
cyberpunk-
new planet.
Yeah, I was about to say it's a cyberpunk
Yeah.
total city.
It absolutely rips. I love it. I want to go there and have a weird purple drink. But so
Add that to Disney World. Put that in there.
Put that in there. Put that next to the Avatar bar. But so Obi-Wan goes in and recovers Leia, and is then essentially on the run from Vader. Meanwhile, you know, trying to deflect and find allies. Eventually is hunted down by the Inquisitors, and Vader narrowly escapes. And then my memory gets pretty hazy with the ending. But basically, like, we get this final confrontation of like, okay, well, our two characters are finally coming together. Obi-Wan essentially has to duke it out with Vader in order to protect Leia and keep the universe at large safe, because obviously we know where Leia's story is going. We get a final conflict, and then I guess the crescendo and the resolution is what Darth alluded to before, where Vader kind of quits this pursuit, and we all quietly. I guess in Obi-Wan's mind, he finally lets Anakin die in his head, and realizes that Anakin is gone and Vader is what remains, and in doing so kind of abandons his whatever remaining feelings or pursuit he had left. And that's kind of, and then there's some other stuff that wraps it up, but that's like kind of the broad strokes just to set it up. God, yes, right. I hate this so much.
I think it's great. So like I said, I did rewatch the first episode. Like we had been told that not to bring deep analysis or whatever, but like I did rewatch the
I did
first
not
episode,
give
so-
Darth that instruction, by the way. He just went rogue on that.
I was trying to
No.
keep it to like an hour instead of 4.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, like
so
we
instead
can
of
have a
3
short
months.
conversation. You kidding?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but as far as like in the first episode, I thought was actually really, really good. But the transformative journey that Obi-Wan is on here is that this is a version of like Luke from TLJ, where I am of the opinion that like they didn't get that right for him, but this is that kind of idea executed correctly.
Yeah.
Where you have like the hero who's been beaten down, and he's abandoned his Jedi ways. Like I thought I hadn't picked up on this before, but there's the juxtaposition of the Inquisitors show up and they're like, well, the Jedi reveal themselves because they can't help but intervene, on the side of good, and then she throws a knife at the guy, and the Jedi like betrays himself by stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have, he's a Jedi, he's going to intervene to save the person. And then they go to Obi-Wan in the very next scene, where he's presented with a situation of injustice, where the guy's like, you only paid me half of my stuff, and you only paid me half my wages for the day, and the guy, I got a family to feed, and the guy's like, well, beat it, or I'll take all of it. And then Obi-Wan, is the very next guy, and he goes, do something about that. And Obi-Wan's like, nope.
He's like, nah, it's not my bag.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's very clear, like he's really abandoned like all of his Jedi ways, and like so this whole journey is for him to get back to that, and that's why Qui-Gon shows up at the end.
Yeah, and he lives in a cave as well, which is like a non-Jedi typically, from my understanding. Not big cave dwellers.
But that was one thing that little thing that I was thinking about that I thought was kind of amusing, was that I was like, God, his commute is forever.
It's so long.
Because he takes it's what is it he rides? I don't remember what he rides, but he rides something.
Thing.
Yeah, way out into the desert. Or no, he takes that from his cave into town.
Yeah, and then he gets on
gets on a transport. Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, man. This guy
like a 3-hour commute.
This guy best be getting himself a Nintendo Switch or something. Like, otherwise, I don't know. Is he doing audiobooks? Like, what's he doing?
Podcasts. That must be.
He just sits in contemplative silence the whole time and thinks about his past mistakes when he could be listening to some murder mystery, finding out what happened all to people who died.
But real quick to tag onto that, why I say that I don't think, or I think this is the Luke from TLJ executed correctly, is that like this is the hero who's given up on something, but he's still actively doing something.
Yeah.
Where like he's like all right, so I failed at that, and I've left that behind. But I'm going to actively do this, which in this case is protect Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because the entire point at the end of the season was him learning that he doesn't need to do that, and he just needs to trust the Force and let things play out like they're supposed to.
Right. But what I'm saying is at the beginning of the situation, that is what he's actively doing something. It may not be the right thing, but he's actively doing something.
Yeah.
So that's the heroic version of failure.
Yeah.
I love that comparison. The biggest problem I always have when people talk about, like, people try to defend what Ryan did with Luke by saying Obi-Wan did the same thing.
But
and it's nowhere near the same because he had literally a galactic army hunting him. Luke just went off by himself when he had the entire galactic army at his beck and call. Like, it's the exact opposite situation. Emotionally, maybe it's the same thing, but I don't know. That comparison never really sits right with me.
Right, it's like I don't want to get derailed on that. We should have a whole thing on TLJ. I don't think we ever got a chance to do that.
Listen, we already have a different show idea for that. Don't worry.
All right,
it's going to be a doozy. Okay, you talked there about this idea of Obi-Wan's journey. I guess is he has to learn to let go of.
Re-embrace the Force.
Re-embrace the Force, and in doing so, I guess one of the key tenets of the Force is, I guess, this idea of serenity, of like you need to kind of, it's very similar to kind of the Kingian-esque idea of Ka or something like that, where you sort of, what will be sort of thing. I'm unclear as to whether or not that, because like thematically that is certainly what's occurring. I'm unclear if that is appropriate given what's emotionally happening, right? Because what Obi-Wan is doing in this journey is he is accepting his true nature, which is, as we see at the very end of this, he's Obi-Wan fucking Kenobi. Like this is a guy in his prime. This is a Jedi Knight in his prime, and he has to accept that he will always be that. And he has to accept that Anakin is gone. And they sort of go part and parcel, right? The reason he's cut himself off from the Force is because that hurt is still so raw, and this is a way for him to deal with that. I don't know that, like, him letting go of that part of himself, of him, I guess, forgiving himself or apologizing to Anakin, however you want to read whatever is happening there mimetically, like, it doesn't make sense for me for the ending to then be like, yeah, and just like stop doing stuff and whatever happens will happen. It's like, yeah, maybe like become an active participant in the, like, it's almost the opposite lesson of what he should learn from that, which is like, I can still absolutely go toe to toe with Vader. I'm still in the game here. There is still hope. I don't know. It just, there is something where the plot and I guess the emotional arc maybe don't tee up super well with that thematic kind of crescendo, and I suspect that's why some Star Wars people didn't love the ending from what you guys were saying before. I don't know, like, yeah, that's my kind of read on it. I do love the imagery of when Obi-Wan kind of in the ending fight, he's throwing all these rocks at Vader, and then he strikes his final blow and severs a portion of Vader's mask, and you get this really cool visual of, you can see the burned Anakin face, and you kind of get the speaking apparatus kind of clicking in and out as Anakin speaks, and it's this really cool. It reminds me a lot of the ending of the original Fallout, where you've got like 4 or 5 radio voices. It's really, really cool and sinister, and it's this slow, heartbreaking moment where all of the thematic stuff Obi-Wan's been going through comes together, and he apologizes to Vader, and he's like, "I'm sorry." And you can see for him, it's this deep moment of catharsis where he's finally letting Anakin go and beginning the mourning process of acknowledging this as Vader. And I think like that, absent how good that fight is, what a brilliant way to kind of get your crescendo of your show. I just thought that was absolutely brilliant.
What did you guys think of the shaky cam? Did you notice it?
The what?
First of all, the shaky cam.
Star Wars tends to have like really, really still smooth camera movements, so that as opposed to like the Bourne series, where it's like handheld and it's kind of the camera's like moving all over the place. It's supposed to, that shaky cam is supposed to really draw the viewer in, and while part of me kept thinking this choreography is bad, when in reality I think I'm seeing what you're talking about, and it's that the shaky cam distorts what you're seeing, and so you can't really focus on whether the move was fluid and felt good and all this kind of stuff. So yes, I agree. I did not really like that style, but I understand what they were going for, and I appreciate them sticking with it. Because I've read a little bit about what they tried to do with the fight choreography, and the director, I can't remember the lady's name, but she
Deborah
talked about
Chow.
Yeah. So she was talking about how she was working with the stunt coordinator to choreograph the fights, because they wanted it to very much be about the emotionality of the fight and not about the flashy moves and stuff like that. So like that's why I think the third sister with Vader fight it felt really, really awkward, but emotionally it was perfect. And I think that's why, is because that's entirely what they were focusing on, which, I mean, that's nice, but still, you could focus on getting some good choreography in there as well.
So one of the things that I always look at is, what were they trying to do? Like there should be a reason for why something is done a certain way, like how something is shot, or like you're talking about, it's the difference of, adding that camera shake in there is, should engender like bring on a certain feeling or put you in the scene. Like I watched, as a point of comparison, I was like, one of the best action sequences, or probably the best action sequence in all of movie history, is the opening to Saving Private Ryan. Mm-hmm. And because it's an extremely chaotic situation and it's very easy to follow, and you are, as the viewer, you are put into the scene in a lot of different places. So you get that sort of first person aspect, and I was like, is there a shaky cam in there? And yes, the whole scene is shaky cam. But I was thinking about this because another thing is that the very first movie that I saw where I felt the shaky cam was done to such an extent that it was like obnoxiously intrusive, that was all that I could see. Like I wasn't watching the movie, I'm just like watching the borders of the screen move, was First Man. And mm-hmm. that is like, and I think that was done for the same sort of like discomfort, but I think I would love to set up like a math algorithm to track like the movement of the screen edges to see like, is there some sort of threshold where it becomes intrusive, like I'm talking about, where like it becomes so noticeable that that's all that you can see. But yeah, because like when I was watching that final fight, like I thought the final fight was pretty cool. I really liked the part with the rocks. And then, like everything about that final fight I thought was really, really good, except for the camera work. I thought that was terrible. I really, really didn't like it.
I didn't even notice it.
That's good.
Yeah. I was so invested in what was happening, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why this is such a subjective thing. But, for me, because A lot after like I think episode 2, I think it was starting with episode 3, I really had to force myself to watch the show. Like I was not interested, or not invested. Like it was like, do you remember how at the beginning of Solo I talked about how they're in the chase scene and I'm like, well, let me open up Reddit, see what's going on Reddit. And I was like, oh, like there's something happening or not happening here that's making me not care about these characters and what's happening. And it was either episode 3 or 4 that I like stopped and started like 5 times. And I'm like, no, I need to go back and finish it. As like I just did not care about what was going on. And then if that's the situation that you're in, then you're really gonna notice like all the nitpicky little stuff and the shaky cam and everything else.
Something that we talk about a lot, which I think is just worth like briefly restating, is that one of the challenges you have with this format of television, I suppose, is, and probably the current era of television, is like some shows are best watched with like breaks between the episodes, right? Like time to contemplate what's going on. So a lot of the time, like a weekly release format like this really suits a show like this that is very character driven and kind of very like sort of like I would say to some people this show is like kind of not boring is the wrong word, but it's very contemplative and slow to, you know, for the most part. That's something that works really well in a film because you kind of have like think about the Batman, right? It's what, how long is that film? Like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, something like that. But the pacing is exacting and it doesn't feel that long because it feels justified in that length. Whereas I think you can tell this TV show was a film script that they've adapted into a TV show. And I'm uncertain if the format that they released it in was the best way to do it. Like if I was going to rethink about the way to consume this, I think it's in 2 episode chunks where you watch the first 2 episodes, then you watch the next 2, and then you watch the final 2. Because that's your 3 arcs of your film, your 3 acts. And I don't know, I kind of had a similar experience where I just sort of, like, I was like, I want to know what happens. I want to see, like, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen duke it out at the end. But when we had that episode with the flashbacks, which I think I was texting Darth at the time, and I was like, holy shit, that's so cool. But also, like, it was cool, but I was like, why is this here? Like, I want to know what's going to happen now. Like, what are we doing? And it was a good thing. Like, it was a really good thematic device to, you know, represent to give us the data that we need to understand the emotionality of these 2 men and where they're at currently. And it was very good mirroring, and I thought that was, like, really, really, like, this is a very adult style of story for Star Wars to tell, which I think is an interesting risk to take. I mean, it doesn't go the places that I think it should, but it certainly is, I would say, one of the least accessible Star Wars properties we've had. Certainly, I could see a lot of Star Wars fans watching this and being like, this is bad, and I hate it, because it's very, like, I totally get that reaction. Like, it's a film, like, this is, I keep calling it a film. This is a TV show for adults, is essentially what I'm getting at. Like, this is written in the vein of a lot of subtext, it's kind of prestige, like, I don't know, for me, I get the reaction of, like, this is boring, or it doesn't do these things, or, you know, X, Y, Z. And exactly what you're saying, when it pulls you out of it, you start to notice this stuff. So just wanted to briefly relitigate, like, I get it, but also this is not a show for everybody, and that's a risk we don't often see Star Wars take. Again, not a big risk. Everyone in the show is still a white male, but, like, for the most part, decent enough risk as far as the type of story they went in to tell.
Speaking of everybody in the show being a white male, what did you think of the newer characters?
So I was saying this to Darth before it started, but the third sister was in one of the Star Wars video games.
Is it Galaxy of Heroes?
No. What's the one where it's the recent one where you're it's a Dark Souls.
Fallen Order?
Is that Fallen Order?
Jedi Outcast, Fallen Order, Jedi Outcast. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Fallen Order is that Dark Souls?
Yeah, it's sort of a Dark Souls style, like, parry system. It's a decent enough game, but she's a main character in that. I was saying to Darth, I was interested to see what they do with her in the canon. I thought, I don't know why they make them do this, but every new actor they get into Star Wars, they make them do this weird, like, if you're a villain, you must do some kind of odd British accent that doesn't quite suit you. So the first few lines she spoke, I was like, that's a weird accent. But then I kind of forgave it. No, I don't know, Darth, you've got a better read on this stuff. What did you think of the new characters?
Well, just to like immediately address what you had just said, initially when the original trilogy came out, that's what Lucas did on purpose. Was all of the bad guys had like British accents and the good guys didn't, aside from Obi-Wan, I think. But that was supposed to be like part of the point was that like they were the big corporate conglomerate, and there was all this other stuff with all these other countries versus the US going on at the time, so it made a whole lot of sense to depict them as the big empire versus the little guy. But then it just kept going where all bad guys in film have accents.
Right.
And it's just a thing. And maybe that's just a stereotype that is just an easily identifiable thing for the audience to immediately get into the story and understand what's going on. All you have to do is hear the person speak, and you are able to identify good guy or bad guy. So it's a very easy, very lazy method of storytelling to just abuse the accents like that. Now, for your question about the characters, if anyone's watched Rebels, a lot of people complained about the way that they took the Inquisitors and changed them for no other reason than the Disney people seem to be biased against aliens, which is so weird to talk about because they're all about inclusivity, or at least claiming inclusivity, but they don't want to depict aliens. They want to humanize everything, which was also, like, if you look in Legends, that was something that the Empire was all about. Like, Palpatine wanted to get rid of all the aliens in government and just have humans. And, like, Disney literally did the same thing with the Inquisitors. Like, at least the second brother, I can't remember if that's what they called him, but they made him short and Asian.
Yeah, isn't he like a big fucking guy originally?
Yeah, he's like a big gorilla or something. He's some other species.
He's got like weird like two big spiky toes. Like, he's a big weird guy.
Yeah, he's like 9 feet tall or something.
Yeah.
And they went the exact opposite direction. And then the head Inquisitor, he was some species of alien. They just made him, if not human, extremely humanoid. And then I can't remember if you ever see. No, I think you do see her face. The other Inquisitor that always uses the droids in the show. But still, that whole thing was really weird that they keep alien washing the series.
Disney
Washington.
have finally gone too far. I want to put the aliens back on my Star Wars and take the women out, please.
I was kidding. I was only kidding.
And we're banned.
Now, the character that I really want to talk about, I know that a lot of people like want to talk about like Reva, and I could see that. But the character that I really want to talk about, who had probably the most significant arc and was the one I was most emotionally invested in, was Wade.
Who the fuck is Wade?
So the
Who the fuck is Wade?
I think I posted this. I posted this somewhere when they're sneaking out of the base and the snow speeders show up, and one of them gets shot down, and they're like, "Oh no, Wade!"
Yeah.
And then if one of you wants to edit in right here the point or the scene from Saving Private Ryan where they're talking to the deaf guy, and he goes, "Who?"
Yeah.
I was like, who's Wade? I don't remember Wade. And then they made it like a really big deal. I'm like, this guy had one line.
Hey, leave her. Come on. All right, I'm on my way. All right, right behind you. Wade!
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
Wade?
I kept thinking I needed to just rewatch episode 1, and then I would have figured out who Wade was, so I never really thought about it much, but it did confuse me at the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just now, like I said his name, but you all like had no idea who I was talking about. Oh no, Wade! Oh!
Hey, what's the fucking deal with the path, guys? So, I don't know why Star Wars keeps doing this, but every time we go back to this era, you can't just be like, oh yeah, we're doing a resistance. Everything is like a weird code word. You can't just be like, yeah, it's the Night Watch. You have to be like, it's the Watch. This is the way. And you're like, just tell me it's Night Watch. I remember Clone Wars. Is the path new, or has this always been like a Star Wars thing?
So But I'm gonna let Darth carry point on this. But before he does, I want to say that one of the issues among the Star Wars fan base that keeps cropping up is like, of course, there's even more Jedi out there. Like, because when we get to A New Hope, it's like Obi-Wan, and then he's supposed to be it, and that's Luke, and then Rebels came along, and now there's more. You have Ahsoka and Ezra out there, and then they're like, okay, and there's the Path, and obviously other Force sensitive people. So it's like that whole scene where they're like, he's our last hope. Is he though?
He's like one of 10.
Because there's like apparently a billion other Jedi out there now.
Yeah.
I mean, they like bad boys, they're breeding.
Ironically, I don't actually know anything in Legends that indicates that the Path was a real thing, although I could totally see it being a real thing. It feels like it was just an homage to like a Harriet Tubman. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's very much the feel that I got from it.
Yeah, I would think so.
Now, the weird thing is that it vindicates a thought that I've always had, that it never made sense that all the Jedi were wiped out. Like, it is statistically impossible that these super warriors, all 10,000 of them, would have been wiped out 100%. Like, it shouldn't be able to happen. So statistically, 200-300 of them are still alive, because I think my numbers are right that there were 10,000 at the time. But regardless, a couple hundred of them left alive, and they're slowly getting picked off between episode 3 and episode 4. So maybe there's only a few dozen left, but yeah, thematically, exactly like you said, it ruins the entire point of A New Hope, but it also makes sense.
Statistically, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also the thing that we're all here for, right? Like your non-diehard Star Wars fandom wants to see guys with laser swords fight. Like, and I realize that our interest in the series is probably different than, I guess, like your general populace. But like the thing people think of when they think of Star Wars.
No, I came here for lightsabers.
Everybody
here for lightsabers.
Everybody has our opinion, and I won't hear any dissent. No, but like, I want to see other stuff. I liked that Obi-Wan just had a blaster for the first little bit here. Watching him do a gun is good for me. But it's
so uncivilized.
It's fucking hell. So can't be doing this, guys. No, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I've just looked it up. So it does seem like the Path was alluded to in Rebels at least, or something like that. But is a relatively new invention, it would seem. So because I was curious, because there is very little that you guys don't know about Star Wars. So I was like, maybe we stumped to Darth, but no, they've invented this.
Well, speaking of the Path, how about that part where they go to see what's his name from Straight Outta Compton? That's him, right? Isn't that?
Oh, the guy pretending to be a Jedi? No.
No. Well, I want to talk about him too, but but no. When they get to the planet, Obi-Wan's like, I need your help, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna help you. Well, yeah, I guess I will help you. And then we meet Wade. But
what?
But you don't remember that scene where like
did we just black out and forget episode 1? Like, what the fuck?
No. This is I think 3. Yeah, it's 3 or 4, where like they get to the Path base, and they're like, it's an example that I would use when people want to criticize a show and say that like there's bad writing. I would be like, this is an example of that, where the guy's just like, Obi-Wan's like, I need your help. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna help you. And then he's like, you don't understand what the Empire is capable of. And the guy's like, yeah, I do.
Now I'll help you.
Okay, I guess I'll help you.
Yeah, his name was Colin Roken, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same kind of trend of rapid turnaround that you see in the Ahsoka episode of Mando season 2, where she's like, no, I'll never help you. I'll never train another Jedi. And he's like, how about I help you whack this lady? And she's like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's like it's very like video game logic in a certain sense, where a character's like, I need you to do this other quest for me in order for you to do this, like, or you need to pass a speech check. Like, I always think of that style of writing as very sort of
no, that's a perfect example though, because that's not even what happens. Where Obi-Wan doesn't have to convince him. The guy like, I won't do it.
No, he just got through
here's my terrible backstory.
Yeah.
And I'll do it. Like, Obi-Wan doesn't have to convince him. He convinces himself.
I also love, like, Star Wars is obsessed with a wife guy with a dead wife. Like, we all love a good wife guy in a story, but in Star Wars, they're always like, the wife's dead because we can't have anybody actually be in a functioning relationship in this universe.
It's like the reverse. It's like a Hallmark movie.
It's the anti-Hallmark.
Or it's the Hallmark Christmas movie. The husband, it's always a business lady in town to do business. Like she comes home for the holidays and there's some single guy there who's a widower because with single dad with a kid, so he's responsible, and the wife's out of the picture for reasons of she's not she didn't run away, she didn't cheat on him or anything like that. No, she died. He's a widower. It's safe.
And she died in some way that left him like a little bit emotionally damaged, but not so much that 2 hours can't overcome it.
Yeah.
As we all know, that's how
2 hours in
works.
a Christmas party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 2 hours in a 2 hours.
We should do a podcast about. We should do a podcast about. I love those movies.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
They're awful, and I love them.
Yeah, I have a Star Wars question, which I always have a lot of. I feel. So okay, this takes place 10 years after Revenge. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and Obi-Wan's just been faffing around in the desert for that whole time. Fine. Okay.
Well, he's been cutting up that dead whale the whole time.
That's a big whale. Does it not rot? Like, I'm not an expert, but I think in the Tatooine sun, surely that would the whole thing would become jerky immediately, right? Like in seconds?
Yeah,
Well,
they're
they do
selling
salt
the jerky.
Yeah, they do salt the crap out of it. I did notice that part.
I reckon that it tastes good. Like, you know what I mean? It looked pretty tasty. Didn't the, is it the same creature that the sand people, like the big dragon that the sand people eat in Mando?
I don't think it's a crate dragon. Like it had a really big fin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was shaped differently.
It looked like a sand fish, but that shouldn't be a thing.
Tatooine's fucked, man. Don't go there. It seems bad. Okay, I just wanted to. I wanted to check because I don't know. I was like, is it one of the same? Interesting. Well, yeah. Should we talk about Kumail Nanjiani's character then, whose name I can't recall, the fake Jedi guy?
Yeah, just forget it. It's Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Haja
He's one of those characters. He's one of those. Well, not characters. He's one of those actors that like it's impossible to separate him from whoever he's playing. Do you know what I mean? Like he was in the Mordor game, Shadow of War, the second one.
Was he?
Yeah,
Who
pretty
was he
sure
in
he was an
that?
orc. He was an orc.
What? Nanjiani.
He was one of the. Did you guys play these games?
Yeah.
Shadow of Mordor. What was
my
that?
God, he
the one
is.
with the Nemesis system.
Yeah, it was Middle Earth, Shadow of War, and Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, yeah. So he was in the second. He was a unique orc that you could.
Oh my
get.
God. Kumail Nanjiani as the Agonizer. Yeah. Oh my God, he sounds so goofy. I love it. I'm gonna put in a clip.
I am going to have your head. I don't know what I'll do with it when I have it, but I'll have it. I am going to put your head on a pie. Which I think is another word for spear. They may be slightly different, I'm not sure, but anyway, it sounds better than spear, so yeah. Head on a pie!
But yeah, so for me, it's like impossible to separate it, and I don't care. I liked it. I thought he was great.
He was fun. I'll be honest, I would just watch an entire show of somebody like faffing about this cyberpunk city pretending to be a Jedi. I was like, this is a way more interesting story to me.
No, see, I was thinking about that. Like, I thought maybe this is like just a very clear signal to us that, like, you know, Obi-Wan, of course, shows up expecting to like see a Jedi, and then we see that it's actually Kumail Nanjiani, and so we know immediately this is not going to be a Jedi.
Yeah,
you know?
I think it's a pretty clear read for the audience in that one.
What did you think of him, Darth?
I was initially, I'm not going to say angry, but I was very unhappy that they went with such a comedic route. That's something I want to do like a deep video about at one point, is that the original films were not at all comedies, and everything keeps trying to skew towards what the MCU has done, where every movie just has to have stupid comedic stuff thrown into it for the audience to be interested. And that's exactly what this felt like to me.
Jarring.
But I liked the scene. I liked the acting. I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was humorous. So given all that fact, shouldn't it be in there? And the answer is still I don't know, because I don't know if it thematically is Star Wars.
Was
that
it
makes
was it
sense.
such a departure from what we're used to that you felt it pulled you out of the story? Because
I would-
that like
yeah.
that's the stuff that like I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I would say yes. Although ironically, the entire scene played out with a different actor, because even when he's being serious, he's being goofy. And if you had a different actor who like actually looked scared, he was like, Obi-Wan might kill me. Like if it played out differently, that scene could have been fine.
So you think if the writing had been the same but the actor had been different, like if we didn't have this person who's inseparable from that personality.
Well, it's possible that the writers intentionally wrote the character to have that goofy personality, and he was the comedic relief of the episode, so it didn't matter what actor they got, he still was going to act the same. That's entirely possible. So if that's true, then I would say I don't like the writing in that scene. I don't like that decision. However, every trilogy has had its own like weird comedic theme. And like the comedic tone of the originals versus the sequels versus the prequels, they all hit differently. So if Kenobi was going to establish a different comedic theme, that would be fine. But there really isn't one. There's just like this one scene and a few jokes randomly.
See, I think they missed a maneuver here, which is, I think, to your point about the prequels, like I think they were cowards and they should have brought Jar Jar back. I think is what we should have done here.
His legend story is terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not good.
Like he gets blamed for the rise of the
Yeah,
Empire.
he has a really
and
bad
everything.
life after all of that goes down. Yeah, I think what's no, you go, Darth.
I have at least 20-hour video planned on Jar Jar
Yeah,
because he is a Sith and I can prove it.
So there's my Star Wars buddy, the guy that I go to when I have a question about something.
yeah.
I think I've seen him. I've known him for 13 years now, and in that time, I've seen him get really angry. Really angry 2 times. One was it was a work thing, and he got screwed, and it was a really bad situation, and he was very mad about that, which was understandable. And the second one was we're sitting at work, and it was the very first time I had seen the theory of Darth Jar Jar, and I'm like going through it with him. I'm like, wow, like yeah, this is really. I thought it was funny, and
It is funny.
Then yeah, it's great. And I was like, yeah, somebody put a lot of thought into this, and it's hilarious, and I love it. And he was just getting angrier and angrier the more that I went into it. So I doubled down, and I was like. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, this is absolute proof. Like he's a Sith. Like he engineered everything. He's the real Sith Lord. He's this guy. Oh, he got so mad. It was awesome.
I love the jokification of Rybold, like just fully leaning in. I joking aside, like obviously Ahmed Best's history with that character and Star Wars is really complicated. He's talked about how difficult that was for him a lot, and so I think it's one of these things where like they need to leave the character alone and just like let it be. And obviously, in Clone Wars, he comes back in different ways and is played to different success and for the most part pretty poorly handled there as well. But to your point, sorry, that was a dumb bit. Anyway, to your point about the comedy.
You were talking about Maul for season 2 earlier. Like, yeah, I think they should bring Jar Jar back. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, and give
him a really good send off.
Yeah, and make him like a bit more grizzled, right? Like I want to see him come full circle and be like I want to see his
I want to see him beaten down.
Yeah, I want to see
yes, exactly.
I want to see him I want to see his Obi-Wan in the desert turn. Like what does a Jar Jar who is absent the safety of all the mechanisms he's had his entire life, what does that transform him into? And Ahmed Best is an absolute killer actor, so I think if they did that and brought him back, I think it'd be phenomenal. I don't think he'd ever do it, but I mean, yeah, huge opportunity there. But to your point about the tone, I guess, and the comedic styling there, I think it's tricky because, and I was thinking about this with Kid Leia, because I was messaging Darth about this when I was watching it, and whether or not so I initially thought they cast a bit too young for the kind of story they were telling. I would have gone like maybe a few years older. It ended up working out nicely in the end, but it's neither here nor there. One of the things that I think is really difficult with a show like this is you have this very self-serious quest that your protagonist Obi-Wan is on, where it's very much the stakes are hypercritical. They're not universe-ending stakes, but they are, mortal jeopardy, and in his case, moral jeopardy. Right? He has to decide like who he's going to be and what kind of man he still is, and whether he's a Jedi and whatnot. And so when you have a character like that, who has, because it's a kid in Star Wars, they have a quirky little droid that bangs around with them, and that droid is intelligent and a tool that can be used, and plays off the infantile nature of the kid well. There are certain scenes where when they stop trying to have Leia be, I don't know what the word for this is, but she can be a bit overbearing in the initial episodes, where they try and have her be too confident or too funny, or like they just sassy. Yeah, sassy is what I was thinking of. They play their hand a bit too heavily, in my opinion, very early on. And when they pull back and just kind of let her do scene work and chew the scenery with Obi-Wan, there's that scene where they're on the transport, and she just sort of holds his hand and closes her eyes or whatever. And for me, like they kind of nailed the tone after about episode 3. But certainly to your point about the comedy, I think it's really tricky when you're trying to finesse how these actors work together, what's their chemistry. And I think putting in Kumail Nanjiani was a good way to kind of diffuse the central focus of that relationship and have us pay less attention to their interaction, and maybe let that build up over time, as opposed to a whole episode where, if it had been more self-serious, I wonder if those scenes with Leia on that planet would just be like way too much, because they're already a lot, with her and Obi-Wan going through the street and she's just like misbehaving for no reason, in a way that is not inauthentic, but like there were moments where I'm like, she's not this dumb. Like, they're just doing this because she's a kid and it makes more tension. And so I think it's tricky.
They also didn't really get across what they were trying to with her character arc, although the seeds are there. In the first like half of the episode or whatever, she is obsessed with getting off of her planet, because they say it in the dialogue that she has never been allowed to leave the planet. So she maybe even has never left the palace grounds. Like, she is so sheltered, and she's the princess, so she's doted upon all the time, all this stuff. So I think her entire arc was supposed to be seeing what the world really is, seeing all of the depravity and all of this stuff, and it is changing, and it's toning down that sassiness that was at the very beginning. And I think that's maybe why she felt better towards the end of it than she did at the beginning, was because she was supposed to have that character arc, but we didn't really see it. We didn't see, like, we're just supposed to infer that she went through these changes because we had those lines at the beginning of her wanting to get off planet and experience the universe.
Well, there's also a very clear scene with her and Bale, where he's like, "You're going to be a senator," and she's like, "I don't want to." He's like, "Well, then that means you're going to be a good one." Yeah. And so it's her, like, to your thing, like, she wants to get, she feels stuck there. She wants to get out and see the universe, and she doesn't want to be the princess. That's everything. Who she is not who she wants to be. And so, but I think that's a good setup. I don't think they go there, like you said. But I mean, to be fair, I think that's fine, because this is it's the Obi-Wan show,
Yeah, I agree. And just on that note too, I think as a politic, that's really interesting. It's a very like liberal conservative tendency, which is this implication that the only good politicians are people that don't want to be politicians, and it's complete fiction. Like, that is just like not how like ideology or naturalization functions. And it's an interesting thing Star Wars has done a lot. There's the intimation that you have a character like Padme contrasted with Leia, where both of them are agents in their particular versions of politic. And you compare it to like the line that Bale has there. It seems to imply, by the way, good to see Jimmy Smits again, looking incredible. That man gets hotter with age. I don't know how he does it.
Like a fine wine.
Like a fine wine. Love that goatee. But yeah, this implication, it's just really suggestive of the way that Star Wars is not necessarily engaged in its politics in the way that the prequels were, I guess. And say what you will about how much politics is in there. It's not done tremendously, like, with a lot of nuance. But I think it's interesting that we just stopped getting it, and this is the most it's been talked about. Like, I think since, like, ever, like, the first thing that happens in Force Awakens is they blow up the Parliament. the planet with the they just destroy it because they're like,
Yeah.
politics. We don't none of that here. Which I think is ironic because then people criticize those films for being too political because of the casting and the choices they make around their protagonists. When in fact, I think it's not political enough, which is a claim I've made before, and people are still mad at me for it. I think this show is smart to not dote on it, but I would have probably rewritten those lines a bit because I just think it implies a bunch of stuff and then parks it and goes, yeah, don't worry, Leia will like mature and this is not an issue. But yeah, just to say, if you've heard that phrase before, which is like the only good politician is one that doesn't want to be a politician, it's complete bullshit. That's told to you by people that are telling you that for a reason. Just to start down on that briefly.
So I was kind of debating what are my biggest takeaways from the show, and both from the good and then from what would I have loved to have seen them done differently. And I was kind of interested to get y'all's thoughts. One of the things that was really fascinating was you had mentioned how Obi-Wan has this moment at the end where he's finally accepting that Anakin is dead and that he is just Vader now. And what's really interesting is that it is him letting go of his perceived responsibility and realizing that like he pretty much did everything right, and it was Anakin's fault that Anakin turned. And it was not, and Obi-Wan was finally able to stop blaming himself. And like the fascinating thing was that it was Vader who told him that. Like if Vader had not said, I killed Anakin Skywalker, like that was Vader, whether he knew it or not, that was letting Obi-Wan off the hook. That was letting Obi-Wan emotionally recover after a full decade of blaming himself for Anakin's fall. And so that scene just hits so weird. I mean, it's amazing. I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars now. But to realize that Vader was doing something good, but he didn't know that he was doing something good because he had like pure fury in his eye that you could see. Like he didn't know he was letting Obi-Wan off the hook, but that was the end result of that. And then that led me to like think more about Vader's overall arc in this entire thing, and I wish they had done it exactly the opposite. It would have made so much sense for like tying all this into episode 4, where we're leading up to the point where he said, last time we met, I was the learner, now I am the master. So all of this has to lead up to that. So I would have loved for this entire season, Vader is the broken one. Vader is terrified of Obi-Wan. Every time he hears that Kenobi is there, he makes some excuse to take the fleet to the other end of the galaxy. Like he refuses to face him because he's the one person that he knows can beat him. So if you have all of that leading up to episode 4, I think it would have fit thematically so much better. And I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on that.
So the first thing that I want to say is that essentially that scene is the climax of Good Will Hunting, right? It's not your fault.
It is, yeah, definitely, yeah.
And so, and yeah, I had that thought as well. And I was like, yeah, that's the key. Well, not the key, but it is a key moment in Obi-Wan's journey to realize that, like, you know, it's not his fault of what happened with Anakin. Because if you think about like what are his big lines in Revenge of the Sith? It's like I failed you, you know.
Yeah, he fully blames himself. Yeah,
and then of course you have what's his name, the Bad Angel on the shoulder of it's a reflection character, right? Owen at the beginning where he's like, you know, when the time comes, Luke has to be trained. He's like, oh, like he did with his father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First of all, really good to see. What's his name? Edgerton.
Joel Edgerton. Yeah, looking good.
Yeah, really good to see him again. I thought he nailed that. And Baru, she can. She can really feel the blaster. You know?
Yeah.
I was impressed. That's good.
And what's her name? Speaking of, going back to Arriva for a second, like, yeah, this is a big complaint that I've seen on the side of the people that don't like this show is, you know, lightsabers don't kill anyone anymore. Apparently, it's like, what? How did Qui-Gon die? Like he got stabbed and he died. The Grand Inquisitor gets skewered. He's fine. Reva gets skewered. Next episode, she's like on Tatooine, ready to kill Luke.
Now, we could go into fight choreography and look at where each one of them was stabbed, because I'm pretty sure Qui-Gon's was a death blow that was like through a lung and through his heart.
Well, I've looked at this before. What's his name? Kylo gets stabbed in the exact same spot that Qui-Gon does.
Yeah, it's because it's a story. And these aren't real people.
Yeah.
That's
the reason.
One of the things that Darth and I talk a lot about in our Sherlock podcast is there is a tendency to misapprehend characters as separate from the story they exist in, and separate from the device of the story. Like, if there is a character in this TV show, it is because it is there as a device of the story they're telling. Like, these aren't real people. They're like this. Like the reason that like they don't die from that stab is because the plot does not demand they die from that stab, because a writer made an active choice to keep them alive. And I just think it's because I also think it's really interesting to go, well, that wouldn't have actually killed them. So what's going on here at a narrative level? Like what are they trying to achieve with this outcome? What was the intention? What was the effect of it? You know, it's a really interesting thing to dote on.
Well, the scientific part of that I really like on when talking about lightsaber combat is they're like, if you get stabbed with a lightsaber, like what would actually happen? So you have like the idea of it would immediately cauterize everything. With is like, so that on the one hand there's that. Mm-hmm. So you like if you got stabbed and you pull out, as long as you didn't hit anything critical, you probably wouldn't die right away. And then you have the other school of thought, which is a lightsaber is so hot, you get stabbed, you would immediately explode.
Yeah, you become plasma, right? Yeah.
Yes. The J.J. Abrams has a fantastic line in the audio commentary for The Force Awakens, and it comes at the moment where they blow up was it the Hosnian system. Mm-hmm. And of course they're on Takodana and they're watching it happen, like it's the net, like it's like just, you know, it's like it's where the moon is, and this is like a system that's thousands of light years away, and they're watching it happen in real time. And he's like, Star Wars is not a physics lesson or something, like, I forget what the exact line is. You can cut it in here, but that's the thing that I always say is, like, if you go back to in A New Hope, like the way the ships move, there's sound in space. It's not married to physics. It's a story. So yeah, you kind of just have to throw all that crap out.
Yeah,
know?
There are, what's the word? Space wizards. So
yes.
It's like we might have gone. We're kind of like we're in a different, formal apparatus, I guess. We talk a lot about genre in this context of like what's the actual genre of the story and what conventions does that demand that you accept as naturalized. Where it's like, this is sci-fi. They're going to do stuff that can't be done. They're going to have these tools that can't exist. On the note of lightsabers, really quickly, I have noticed, I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that's happened with the shift to Disney is that you look at the old films, and obviously the way that they did the lightsabers was very different. I'm thinking specifically of the prequels, where they kind of the lightsaber is always often the brightest light on the screen. Like they have the exposure cranked really high. On these lightsabers, and particularly Disney ones, the exposure is a bit lower on the center of the lightsaber. It looks a bit more there's more of a defined shape to them, in a way that makes them easier to visually follow, or if you will. I was thinking specifically about that last sequence with Vader. Do you guys have is there like a platonic ideal of a lightsaber fight in the Star Wars like canon that you guys could be like, this is the version of lightsabers that was where they really nailed it? Like, is there a common consensus on that?
Of like lightsaber combat or how they physically look?
I guess, I mean, for me they go hand in hand, but I guess I was thinking of the visual aesthetic.
So, Darth can either correct me or back me up on this, but my understanding of the way that the lightsaber combat is described is that in the original trilogy, it's very much the samurai movie, which are very, very, like, if you've ever gone and watched like the Japanese version of that came before the Clint Eastwood versions of those movies. Mm-hmm. I forget what I love them. I forget what they're
Samurai.
called. Well, it's not Seven Samurai that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's the same era.
Yeah. But it's basically all the Clint Eastwood movies, just they were samurai first. And
Flying Fortress?
That
sound familiar?
Hidden Fortress. It's Hidden Fortress, isn't it? I don't know.
Regardless,
I'll
remember.
I will find it. And it's on HBO Max, I know, or they were on HBO Max.
Yeah, you nailed it.
did
Hidden
watch them not
Fortress
that
is
long
right.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, all the fights are very slow, very deliberate. Whereas like you have, so that's the era of lightsaber combat that they're in, is that this is a sort of a forgotten art. And that's why the combat is the way it is in the original trilogy. And then you go back to the prequel trilogy, and there's like 7 different forms, and it's very fluid, and it's a lot more like dancing because you're at the peak of Jedi-ness or whatever. So and then you have the whole there's a really stupid part that a lot of people talk about where in the Revenge of the Sith, the fight where like Obi-Wan and Anakin are just like twirling lightsabers at each other for like 5 seconds, and
It's so good.
And I think the explanation for all of that is that because they're Jedi, the advantage that you have is you kind of get a sense of what's going to happen, so they all know what the other guy's going to do, and plus like they trained with each other, so they know their different fighting styles.
Yeah, we literally talked about this exact conceit with one of the lightsaber fights that I can't remember which fight we covered, but like this literal conceit of it was the it was the one where we talked about the Kylo Ray lightsaber toss. We talked about the notion of like these are precog space wizards who can predict the immediate future of what each other is doing, and so sometimes you're not necessarily going for a killing blow. You're trying to buy time to work out what they're going to do next. And so there's this element of like it becomes a bit more like kind of operatic and, almost like a ballet at certain points.
The thing that Darth said, I don't remember where he said this, but the thing that Darth said that I think about all the time now, and it's kind of ruining things for me, is the idea that one of the very first things that you learn as a Jedi when it comes to lightsaber combat is how to keep the other person from turning off your lightsaber with the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that all the time now. I'm like, this, so you have somebody who's not trained with the Force that picks up a lightsaber, and Darth Vader just goes click.
And you have that same thing in the fight with Vader and Obi-Wan on that planet. You see like multiple, and probably other times as well, like anytime that one opponent lifts the other one up with the Force, or anytime he Force chokes him, or anytime he pushes him with the Force, like all of those were failure in Obi-Wan's defense. Like there's like a practice of Force defense where you can stop the Force being used against you, but and that's like all deeply covered in the books, but the movies, like pretty much it doesn't exist whatsoever.
Did you guys clock that in the flashback fight, Obi-Wan like force grabs Anakin's lightsaber from his hand? I fell out of my chair. I was like, huh? Is that, you can just do that? What the fuck? And I get what
I think when that happened is when I thought about what Darth was saying.
Yeah. Because I mean, like thematically it works, right? Like, I mean, it exactly nails what it needs to, which is like that Anakin will always go for victory, but even when he should be more conservative, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I just thought that was a very odd choreography choice. We should also, before we wrap up, talk about the fact that they just straight up didn't DH Hayden Christensen in that sequence. I don't think.
Not very well. No.
He looked. I said this to Darth. He looked about 40, and I'm not complaining. The man is about 40. Don't get me wrong, but he just looked kind of. And I guess the idea was that was between. Like that was in the lead up to Revenge. That would have been like presumably during the height of the Clone Wars, because he has the old haircut, but looks a bit older, and he's in the he's got on the dark robes that he wears in Revenge and the Clone Wars. So I have no problem with like that. I just thought it was an odd choice not to. They've got presumably just got that at Disney, right? Like they just have they push a button and it makes you look younger. I assume is that how CG works? That's what they did in Captain Marvel.
I've seen some YouTube deepfakes already that I think are, or I think some people have done like a better de-aging already.
Obi-Wan, Anakin, DH.
And the interesting thing was, like, I assumed they got the same guy because it was one of those YouTubers that they got to come in and do Luke for like the last season of whatever he was in.
Yeah.
Because this YouTuber did it better than the Disney people.
Yeah.
And because they were just doing like straight up CG, but he was doing the deep fake technique, and it didn't look like they did the same. I assumed that they were going to do the same thing, but it didn't look like they did with Hayden, because like you said, he looked older, and I assumed that was supposed to be on purpose. But he looks even older than but he looks even older than he does in episode 3, so it actually just doesn't track.
That was my thought. I mean, I don't mind. I'm looking at a deepfake now, and it's extremely good. Like someone's de-aged him with a. I don't know if this is actually deepfake or they've just put like a mask on or something, but it looks really good. Very, very cool to see, Hayden come back and do his thing. I would give stupid amounts of money for like a live action Clone Wars TV show, it turns out, which I didn't know I needed in my life. I just want to see Hayden Christensen be Anakin for like hours on end. He's just so naturalized in that role. I
would have liked a lot more Hayden Christensen in this.
Yeah. He's so good. He just like whatever it is, he has it. Yeah.
Well, I guess the good thing, even if we don't get him and Vader together, which we're not supposed to, but if we don't get Obi and Vader interacting in seasons 2, 3, 4, whatever, we could very much have flashbacks like those. So we could get a lot of content from the Clone Wars and stuff as flashbacks. They could do an entire episode as a flashback, and it would add so much to the universe. I really hope they are smart enough to do that.
There's two other things that I want to bring up. We touched on this a little bit, but the nitpicky stuff. I felt that this show, more than any one that they've done so far, felt like very nitpicky to me. And maybe that's because I wasn't like really in the story, but there were so many things where, like, one of the scripts that I've been working on for a while, because I haven't had that much time, but I've been thinking about it. And I started thinking about it with Book of Boba Fett, was the problem of why didn't they just do this, or why didn't the bad guy just do that, or why didn't the good guy just do this? And it's when you're thinking that, and that's bad, when you're as the viewer thinking, well, why didn't they just do this? And there's a lot of that in this show. And then like one of the things, and I've got a clip that you can cut in here too, where they're going to the path base, and she's like, they're behind an armored door. If they dig in, they can hold out for days. And then I was just like, and what? Do you have some place to be?
It could be days. Then put some food in the life raft. For God's sake, man, do I have to think of everything?
Like, they'll hold out for days. It's like, and then you get there, and it's like they're blasting away on the door, and then she just cuts through the door with the lightsaber. Like, well, why did you lead off with that?
Why? That's the first thing I would try in most situations, is use the lightsaber, right?
Yeah, so I felt this show, more than anything else that they've done, was very much a lot more nitpicky stuff like that most of the time I'm willing to, like, throw away like a nitpicky complaint and go, that's not really that important, or I can look past that. But like, it was very hard for me to stay in the show with all those things happening.
There's a concept before your second point there. There's a brief concept that I think is worthy of acknowledging, which is this idea of, like, as you read something or you watch something, it tells you, like, it teaches you, like, how to view a character and how to assume what the degrees of their character are. When I say degrees, I mean, like, literally, like, imagine people's behavior on, like, a compass, right? Where it's like, at the top of the compass you have, like, polite and nice, and then maybe, like, to one side you have, like, snarky and mean. Think of it like a video game dialogue wheel, if you want. And as you go through a story, the text is telling you more and more what you should be expecting but like how you should be developing that compass for each character. And if the character, if that compass is developed well enough, you get a really good sense of who they are. And so when they take action, you already kind of, like, you get it. Like, you understand their motivation, you understand why they're doing something. The thing that you're describing is where that hasn't been developed well enough, or they do something that's so far outside that compass. I think in this case, for some of the characters, they just don't develop it enough for when an action is taken, you're like, that was weird, why didn't they just? And that's a really it's a difficult thing as a writer of a text to get that right. But the way that you do that is you spend a lot of time, like, finessing it and taking your time to be like, by the time we get to this scene where Reva does X, we need to understand that she thinks this way about these topics, and you work backwards and you rework your text constantly until all that stuff is massaged in. So yeah, I felt the same thing. Probably less so than you guys. I was probably pulled out of this less than you guys, but I was also kind of watching this a bit head empty to an extent, because I wasn't planning on talking about it through content. So maybe that was also part of it.
Well, that is what you bring up isn't. It wasn't my second point, but it is something that I did want to talk about. Whereas what you're describing there is I heard this not that long ago, and I thought it was a really good thing of explanation of like if you have on the dimensions of character, where it's like you have a one-dimensional character, he's a bad guy, he does bad things, and then a two-dimensional character, he's a bad guy, he does bad things, and he likes cheese. So that's something you know about him, or whatever. It adds an extra dimension. Then the third dimension is you understand their motivations. Like, obviously we never got around to doing it, but I wanted to talk to you guys about the whys of a character, of like what motivates them and moves them through the story and everything. And if you understand that, you have, why didn't they just? Oh, because of this. This is why they didn't do that. And that's the third dimension is what you're talking about. And for Riva, there was a lot of the show where I was like, I don't understand what this character wants. And, and up until the point where it gets revealed and I'm like, really? I didn't really buy into it.
Like, it was just a weird, it didn't feel right for what they'd set up so far. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't. I actually thought like her character was one of the very weak points of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, just add that to the list of women that Disney has failed.
And unfortunately, this makes me a racist, apparently. So.
Yeah, of course. Well, I say that she should have been an alien, and there should have been no women. So, take that as you want.
Can't you take a joke?
Sorry, what was your second point, Rye?
I'm gonna have to think about it for a second.
Don't cancel me. I was being facetious. Don't cancel me for saying that.
No, you're done, man. You're done. It was nice knowing you. This was fun.
Joking.
Well, while he's thinking about that, I can go back and when you were asking your lightsaber question, I think you had been talking more aesthetically about like the look of the blade and everything, and the light that it puts off. And it's really interesting because like when Rebels came out, all the fans were complaining because it looked so weird because they went back and looked at the original concept art, and so there was like almost no glow. It was just this really tiny core to the saber, and almost it just looked it looked different, but it looked bad in a lot of people's opinion. And I think that same thought about what they did with this, and a lot of the times about the sequel trilogy, because there's different styles of doing a quote unquote lightsaber. And in the old films, it was just a metal stick, and in post-production, they would go back and they would put the glow effects on top of it. In the sequel trilogy, they started using actual glow sticks that were emitting real light, and so when they were swinging them around, they could actually fight with them and they wouldn't break. And they used the same thing in here, and I've talked with one of my friends about this extensively, because like if you're a video editor and you're looking at this, a lot of it just looks terrible. They like the contrast is dialed up so high. It's like, especially whenever Obi-Wan is holding his saber close to his face, it's this dark, sickly blue that just completely blows out everything. It's such a weird look when you go back to the other films, because there's no real life casting of the light on their faces when they get the blades that close to them, because they didn't have it back then. So like stylistically, it's so different than what it used to be, and it kind of takes me out of the story because I'm so used to that look from before. But they also consistently had them fight in really dark environments. Both of the fights were at night with very little to no lighting anywhere around aside from the lightsabers. So it's hard to do like a pure 1-to-1, because most of the fight scenes in the other movies had better lit environments, whereas you had more light on the subject rather than just like the lightsaber and a little bit of moonlight or whatever. But I mean, to answer your question, I put the prequels, especially like episode 3, like that's my epitome of what a lightsaber should look like, because this looks, I don't know if I should say too realistic, but the way that it puts light on the subjects, it doesn't look right to my eye for some reason.
Interesting. Because you go, right?
There's a I'm gonna have to find it and send it to you, but there have been a number of posts, or I don't know if you call them memes, but like, I guess the topic is a meme. If you applied the current lightsaber lighting, or visuals to the original trilogy or the prequels or whatever, and there's one with The most recent one that I've seen is like Luke in the throne room when he's fighting Vader, because that's a pretty dark thing. And they're like, if this shot, and it's the one where he's like, if you imagine like he's holding the lightsaber up, and because just right after Vader's like, oh sister, and then Luke like freaks out and attacks him. They're like, if you had Disney lighting on this scene, it basically like obscures, like you can't see Luke at all. It's just nothing but green.
All right, let me check this out. Here we go. Okay, Darth's just. Oh my goodness me! Yeah, okay. So Darth just. I'll pop it up on the screen, but it's Luke holding his saber above his head, and he's completely occluded by this bright green light, and all you can see is just the white of his teeth. He looks like a little goblin or something. That's incredible. Interesting. Well, I mean, like obviously they're stylistically very different types of films as well. I mean, so for me, my platonic ideal is probably, and this is a hot take, so I apologize in advance, Star Wars fans. I think the platonic ideal of the Star Wars visuals is Mando, where you've got Ahsoka's tools, and then maybe to a lesser extent when we see Luke and stuff later, but certainly that first introduction of the swords in that show.
Now, ironically, that works because it's white light.
Yeah.
Because her sabers emit something that the camera accepts far easier than the red or blue.
I also, and this is, I'm going to put them side by side. Have you guys seen that the digital crew did like they made their own lightsaber short where it's like more like a fencing style. Have you guys seen that?
It's the time loop one, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I love the choreography because it was based, like they had a real martial artist come in and choreograph it.
I thought the style of the way that they styled the lightsabers and the sparks coming off them was very reminiscent of that. And the way that they used the environment they were constantly having the swords, clipping the walls and stuff. It made me go, did Disney watch that? Like...
All right, so I remembered the second thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that people who do like the sequels, or people that don't like the people that don't like the sequels, say
what did
is
you
that
just say?
No, because there's
what?
So there
Was that
two of the main communities that I hang out in. One is a group of people that don't like either the sequels or Disney Star Wars in general.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other group is the people that don't like them.
Oh.
Yes. So it's like you have, I don't know if you know this, there's this whole sector of YouTube and internet discourse called the fandom menace. And these are people that, when you talk about like toxic criticism or whatever, that's what these people are considered.
The fandom menace.
The fandom menace.
I hate that so much. What a fucking goofy name.
But anyway, so like the second group is, or the people that don't like them, or etc. So they generally have a very positive opinion of the sequels in Disney Star Wars and a very negative opinion of people who don't like those things. Anyways, so one of the things that I read all the time is that when describing people that didn't like the sequels, but like maybe they liked Rogue One, or they liked they liked Vader in Rogue One, or the end of Rogue One, or they liked Luke in season 2 of Mando. It's like, oh, they don't want deep nuanced story, which I don't personally think that we got in TLJ, but like that's the positive opinion of TLJ is that it's a more nuanced story. It's not all action lightsaber fights. So it's like what the people that didn't like that, what that group wants is that all they want is hallway scenes. Is like give them hallway scenes and they'll be happy.
Yeah, right.
So when Vader shows up in episode 3, I think, when they're on when he gets dragged over the coals, I'm pretty sure that's episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see him suiting up at the beginning of episode 3, which we've never seen before. Is a pretty cool scene.
So when he shows up on the planet, and he's like, Obi-Wan, come out, and he's like walking down the street just randomly snapping people's necks and like pulling them out of stuff like that. I'm like, this is a hallway scene, and I don't like it. It's one of the videos that I've really wanted to make, which I haven't had the time to do, and I haven't found the angle of attack to figure it out yet, is what makes those scenes in Rogue One and Mando so good. And I have some ideas there, but the foundation or the setup doesn't exist in this to make me interested, or the justification of not. This is the opposite of why didn't they just. This is why is he doing that? Is he's just walking like he's walking down the street and he just pulls. There's a guy off standing there and he just pulls him out of the window and then he just snaps the guy's neck. And first of all I was like, whoa, that's pretty dark for Star Wars. That's the closest we're ever gonna get to Darth Vader saying fuck, which is one of the
give me that
one of the
film.
Yeah, well that's what the Phantom Menace wants. That they want dark and cringy Star Wars. Not cringy, but like dark and edgy Star Wars.
The problem is, but they don't, because then when someone makes it, it's not interesting. Like, I get that impulse, but like, I've seen Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it's not great. Like, I've seen that 5 times because I have a problem and I need help. But like, they don't want this. They think they want this, but they don't. I promise they don't want this because it makes really dull stories.
I agree with you. It's the idea of the audience wants this, or like you think the audience wants this. Then no, they don't. What they really want is this. Yeah. And so I have a big problem with that whole idea of they just want hallway scenes. Yeah. So I'm like this is a hallway scene.
Well, the weird thing is they really don't know what they want either, because like I was curious because I haven't been like deeply involved in that community in months and months and months. So I went back to Saltier Than Crate and like I browsed it a little bit to see what they thought of Kenobi, and it was obvious how much the sub has like died compared to 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was ratcheting up to 80,000 people or whatever it's at. But so like each post maybe only had hundreds of upvotes and dozens of comments or whatever, but the things they were complaining about in the series, while they may be correct, like thematically, like this didn't work for XYZ, Leia's character didn't work for XYZ, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, why are you focusing on that? Like, that is such a tiny nitpick, and it utterly ruined the entire show, and it ruined your entire day. And like I've talked about this before, that like this is all tied up in like they perceive themselves, they identify as someone who hates Star Wars Disney. So no matter what, they are going to find something to hate. And then there's this other group that is going to find something to hate just because this other group is hating something. And it's like, there's just this weird circle. And then we're just on the outside analyzing these people. So now there's 3 different layers.
Yeah. I thought about, there was some movie maker that I saw the other day where he was like, nobody goes to, like, people generally inherently, they want to, when they go to a movie, they want to like it. Like, and I was thinking, it was like, nobody goes to see something that they don't like, that they're not going to like. And I was like, that's not true. I think a lot of people hate watched the show.
Yeah. Which is like, we talked about this so much on the Sherlock show. Like, I just think it's a deep misapprehension of like what text is, like, and just a complete fundamental misunderstanding of like how art functions. One of the things that we always talk about is, it's a big part of the theory that we'll get into in season 3 when we get there, is the idea that like meaning is constructed at the time of reception. When you watch a film, that is when meaning about that text is generated. It is not generated at the time of creation. It doesn't matter what like an author puts in the text. What matters is like the reception of it for you as the reader. And in this context where it's like, these people are, like you're saying, Darth, they've decided they're going to hate it. They're just ruining media for themselves for no reason. Like, it's a really self-flagellatory exercise where it's very self-defeating to me to sort of suggest, I think I'm going to dislike this, so I'm going to find ways to dislike it, and constantly claim that those ways aren't to do with seeing people that I disagree with in the content, right? Because it's always stuff like, I didn't like Eternals because they gender bent some characters, or Thor has a gay character in it, or like Jane Foster is like a lead character. The SJWification of all of this media.
It's too woke.
It's too woke, and it's like, it's not woke enough. Like, Disney's facile attempts to do this stuff is like so not progressive, it's embarrassing. And so it's both a misapprehension by these readers of how text functions, and it's giving Disney way too much fucking credit for not doing enough. So it's both, it's like, it makes my brain melt. If you want to see me have a full-on mental breakdown, I think the season 1, episode 3 of give up after 3-hour Sherlock show. I think I just ended up yelling at Darth for 10 minutes about that exact thing. It's so baffling to me.
Season 1, episode 3 of Sherlock. Which one is that?
Is
that the one where Moriarty shows up the first
yeah,
time?
yeah. Because we were talking about because the way they queerbait him, I was talking about the affectation and how people received it and all that. Well, we're probably about to wrap up anyway, because we didn't want to go this long, and we've now hit an hour and a half. Do you guys have any? Okay, I think what we should do is takeaways, and then what would you want to see if they were going to do more of the show? What would you want to see in like a next season? We can speculate. Fans love that. They love to speculate. Yeah, Darth, what's your takeaway? What are you walking away with this from?
Well, fortunately, we don't have to get it all out now because I have 6 more hours of stuff I want to talk about. So we could start doing a bunch of one-scene takes
let's do it.
on all the rest of this.
I would very much enjoy to do like a deep thing on like each episode. That would be a lot of fun with you guys, I think.
Yeah, like
I'd have to go back and watch it again because like again, well not again, but like when I went and go to rewatch episode 1, I was like, this is I enjoyed that. That was good. I like that. I noticed a bunch of things like I talked about the juxtaposition of this is what a Jedi is, and then Obi-Wan is very much not that anymore, and I was like, that's pretty good. I like that because the whole story structure thing of when you introduce a character, you got to show how they're stuck and what's you have a general idea of like how we need to get him out of that, and then the call to adventure, and he's like, no, I'm not that guy anymore. Yeah, so I would love to do like a individual like episode thing. I think we could talk for 3 years about that.
Oh,
it would be fun.
For sure.
As far as my takeaway is, what I had said before about going back in the future seasons, which from what I've heard, this was like the #1 of all time release on Disney Plus as far as viewership goes. So assuming that's true, it's definitely greenlit for season 2, and I assume season 3, 4, and 5. It could go on for a long time as long as Ewan wants to do it. They could keep coming up with little sub stories, but in all of those, they could have flashbacks, and we could get more that we haven't seen of the Clone War era of Hit and Anakin going off and having adventures, which so many of us would just pay stupid money to just see those 2 Jedi going off and having adventures. So I would that's what I really want to see is those flashbacks, because all of this stuff is great, but they're broken. I want to go back to the Age of Heroes. That's like I've got a script I'm working on right now, and like our society is missing way too much of the Age of Heroes right now. We are, for a long time, we have been stuck in like the broken anti-hero meta. And I want to go back to when people were heroic and noble and they were clean and had baths.
Yeah, I know you do, but I want to be stuck in the dirt forever. I want to be in fucking Tatooine grind until I die.
So the really interesting thing about that is the exact situation that the general media landscape was in the 70s that made Star Wars such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Ironic.
People are like,
you say?
Yeah, interesting.
How the turn's tabled.
So my thing on I agree. I think it would be both a mistake and a shame not to do a second season of this. I would like to see more Hayden. I would like to see Maul. I would love if they brought Jar Jar in, like we talked about, like wrap up that character in like a brilliant way. I think people would love that.
And Ahmed Best is fucking.
We didn't even mention him.
Yeah, Liam Neeson. Yeah, we totally forgot.
Right?
There was a real quick point that I want to make about that is that's a very fan servicey moment. There were 2 fan servicey moments there in the end with when he walks up to Luke and does hello there, and then when Qui-Gon shows up. And I was like, at that point of the show, I was very much not in the show, and to me I was like, when they do a fan service like that, it like fan service well done or done well. I don't know how you want to put that, but fan service when it's done correctly is like the icing on the cake, and when the cake is not done well, it's just the icing, and that's all that there is. And it didn't really work for me. They didn't land. They didn't have the emotional impact that they should have. I was like, oh, there's Qui-Gon.
I enjoy that half of your media crit is filtered through the lens of like the early 2000s Spielberg war era boom or like food metaphors.
Yes.
It's great.
I used to do sales. They told us like you have to communicate in analogies.
Yeah, you do. I forgot he was even in it, if I'm being honest. Also, how I'm watching that scene again. How fucking goofy are Obi-Wan's goggles that he's got on his neck? He looks like he's got like just regular ski goggles on, which is very funny to me. I think I would love to see more. And that goofy pitch we have about Jar Jar, I'm coming around on pretty hard. I think that'd be excellent. I would maybe want to see less Luke and Leia, and maybe just more like contained side adventures where like he's just going off into the galaxy to do an adventure. I guess to your point, Darth, I would love to see some flashbacks. I would love just the lads going on like a side quest from the Clone Wars. We just get to see that. I think that'd be brilliant.
What's the throwaway line? The one that from Revenge of the Sith, where like that business on whatever doesn't count.
Yeah.
Tatooine Mordia.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, in the Lucas style, everything must have an explanation. So let's see that. No room for subtext or world building. Everything must be literalized in Wikipedia. I would love to see Maul come back. Maybe bring in some of the kind of extended universe, kind of different stuff happening at the time. Like maybe let's see less world galaxy ending stuff and more like self-contained kind of different stakes. I think would be interesting. But yeah, I really in talking this through, I enjoyed this. I have a lot more to say about it and a lot more research I'd like to do, but I think this is definitely one of the more adult stories that they've gone for, and I think that, as I was saying before, could be quite alienating. But I mean, with the amount of people watching it, we're definitely going to see more of this. It is baffling to me that they haven't done this earlier. Like, I don't. This seems like such a natural maneuver for them. So it's good for them to finally pull the trigger, and I'd love to see what they do with it next. Give me more of that good Obi-Wan hair. You know what I mean?
But cleaner.
But apparently Darth wants him to have a bath, which I think is right out the picture. Just put more sand in your hair, mate. You'll be right.
Sand by Chanel.
All right, so let's break out the calendar and get this working.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, guys. Well, we'll wrap it up there. We said we were going to do an hour, and we did an hour and a half. So I think that's pretty good for us.
Par for the course.
Yeah. Look, we probably could have gone for like 4 hours. But I need to get a burger because I need some protein because it's really starting to set in over here. Darth, what are your pluggables? What's the deal? Give us the skinny.
Just go to YouTube and write random words that include the word Darth, and you'll eventually find me.
Yeah, it's a good method. I've also found if you close your eyes and just open the keyboard in YouTube and just keep tapping and hit enter, you'll eventually get there as well. Star Wars video essays, good content. We have a podcast over there called That One Scene, where we break down one scene from Star Wars in exhaustive detail. And I slowly lose my mind as I learn more about Star Wars and how bad it is. Brian, do you have anything that you want to plug? Have you got anything coming up?
Hopefully. It's been a long time since I've made anything, but I have more time in my life now, making another transition, which allowed me to do this, and then hopefully some more stuff like this in the future with you guys. And then hopefully I have a bunch of ideas and like script ideas that I wrote down a long time ago, which I haven't had time to do. So hopefully I will have time to do that.
There you go. Return of the Rybold. Because it's the name of the Star Wars film. Goofy, dumb. If you like this kind of thing, you can follow all the stuff that I make at zeroindent.com. Darth and I have a podcast called Give Up After 3, which is a critical analysis and historical contextualization of BBC's Sherlock, which just kind of explores. It's a real deep exploration of that show. It's also, I guess, a really good entry point if you've ever been interested in English literary academia and that kind of thing. It's a really good kind of gateway to understanding what are the kind of critical things you need to understand in order to kind of pass text and things like that. And if you kind of have that question in your head of like, why was TV so weird, 2012, through 2016, and, what kind of apparatus led us to where we are now with the Disney model. It's a really good kind of deep dive into that as well. So go check that out, zeroindent.com/giveupafter3, or if you just type in Give Up After 3 to your podcast provider, it should come up. that's all she wrote for us today. If you enjoyed this, maybe send it to a friend. Or if you have a friend who doesn't like Disney Star Wars, send it to him, because I just want to see what happens. I want to see how much hate we can garner. Let's just do it. That's all from us, guys. So appreciate you watching or listening. And we'll definitely be back talking about Kenobi in some more detail. There's also, that's my last comment, is they should have called it Kenobi, not Obi-Wan. They should have just called it Kenobi. I think it's a better title.
Wait, didn't they?
They called it
isn't it
Obi-Wan
Kenobi?
Kenobi. Isn't it?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure isn't it? Did I black out and imagine that? Obi-Wan TV
Yeah, how much of a party did you have last night?
Yeah, I was about to
God.
say.
Yeah, the TV show. No, fuck you guys. It's called Obi-Wan Kenobi. That was some real gaslighting right then.
No, you're right. It is.
You
It is
saw
Obi-Wan
that.
Kenobi.
You saw the boys abusing me just in real
No,
time.
I agree with that. It should have just been Kenobi.
Kenobi, exactly right.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. In my mind, literally, I would have just bet you $1,000 that it was only called Kenobi, because that's
Damn
what
it.
it should have been.
Could have had
That's what it should have
$1,000 in my
been.
pocket. Yeah, it's a better name, but I guess they made it Obi-Wan Kenobi because so everyone knows what it is. Okay, we got to get out of here. We'll catch you guys next time. Enjoy or don't enjoy Star Wars. It's super up to you. We really don't mind. Just stop yelling about it.
Let go of that hate.
Let go. Let go of the anger. Hate leads to suffering.